Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Tekken Talk podcast. I want to, right off the bat, apologize for some missed episodes. I went on vacation in a country where Spotify is not available, but I am now back and want to recap the Tekken World Tour Finals, which I'm sure most of you have seen, and that's what we'll do in today's episode. And then in the next couple of weeks, of course, we have the Tekken 8 release, which is super exciting. And we might do a couple last previews before the launch, and then once the launch happens, of course, we'll be talking about it. So, okay, the Tekken World Tour Finals was last weekend in New Orleans, United States, New Orleans, Louisiana, United States of America, and it was the final Tekken World Tour Finals of Tekken 7. I don't know about you, but I've been following the finals since Kudan's won the first one, and it's just been such a great tournament every year. I think, besides the prize money mishaps, it's definitely been the highlight of the year besides Evo Vegas for the Tekken scene. And so this week was also an amazing tournament. And let's start with the last chance qualifier. So going into the last chance qualifier, I think before the tournament, a lot of people expected kind of a Pakistani champion, at least I did. But unfortunately, they lost. Many of them, as far as I know, lost the visa battle. And not only that, I think there was a couple international players who just planned on going and didn't go, like Sefi Black from Germany. But whether that was true or not, there were some international representatives, such as Rest from Korea, Ao Ritchie, Schroedel from the UK, and JDCR. But what we saw was essentially an American-dominated tournament. So the winner was American, who was Joe Crush. A huge congratulations. Just such an awesome and dominant performance by Joe Crush, and beat AK in the grand finals, AK from the Philippines. I think AK has gotten second place in like a ton of tournaments. I think he got second place in the LCQ last year also. So that sucks, but of course I was kind of rooting for Joe Crush, and it was epic. We also had FDX, Genghis-Khan, and Ty from the US all in the top 8, and JK777. Infested from Korea was in the top 8, and so was Ao Ritchie from the UK. But it was a pretty American-dominated tournament, and Joe Crush took it, which meant he was going to the final day with Jack as the final member of the 20-person list. So then on the finals day, we had this whole like group selection process where the first 4 people in each group are like predetermined based on points, and then each player after that like chooses which group they want to be in. And so I think after the group selection, there was a clear group of death, which was Group C. Group C had Lowhigh, John Ding, Atif, Joe Crush, and Book. And what's crazy about that group is John Ding and Atif, right? They played each other in last year's finals, and Atif won, but John Ding has beaten Atif in tournaments before. So, like, that matchup, I think everyone was super duper looking forward to. Lowhigh has been, like, one of the best players in the world since he came back a few months ago. Book is the best player in an entire country in Thailand, and Joe Crush is, like, super like hot with a ton of momentum from the LCQ. Another interesting, I think, pretty exciting group was Group A, where you had Ulsan, Rangchu, Joe Jury, Joka, and Super Akuma, all just like super strong players. Group B, I think was a little bit went as expected. You had Arslanash, Ao, Rath, Anakin, and Kakoma. So Arslan and Ao took that group, I wouldn't say like without any resistance, but fairly easily. And then in Group D, CBM, Ni, Daniel Mato, Chikrin, and Tibetano. So some of the highlights from the group stage: John Ding versus Atif. John Ding needed to beat Atif to get out of the group, and he did so. I think he needed to beat him 2-0. And he did so in just the most epic fashion. If you haven't seen that match, I highly recommend doing that. an Eddie player beating an Akuma player was just like such a satisfying thing, not only for me to watch, but everyone at the venue to watch. I wasn't there, but you can see the videos of how crazy the crowd goes when he won. So that was super exciting. Also, Ulsan, I would say Ulsan, Arslan's, and Lohai's performances in the group were just insane, like super dominant, super clean in general. So I highly recommend watching those matches. Specifically, Lohai and Arslan were just unbeatable in the group. Arslan only lost the game to Anakin. I don't want to say he was picking, different characters, but I think he lost the game playing as Noctis. Um, and then in Group D, there was a little bit of controversy because Ni and CBM tied in points, but CBM won the head-to-head, which means he went through over Ni. So there was some debate of like, and when I say went through over Ni, I meant into winner side, not loser side. So like, should head-to-heads be tiebreakers? I think Ryan Hart put out a tweet like, if you have the same amount of points, you need another tiebreaker. The head-to-head shouldn't just be the only tiebreaker. But anyway, CBM went out in winners playing Noctis the whole way through. And then, yeah, that was kind of the group stage. Okay, so then let's get into the top 8 because it was an amazing top 8. So in winners, you had Ulsan versus CBM, Arslan versus Lohai. And then in losers, you had, excuse me, Rangchu versus Ni, and then Ao versus John Ding. So right off the bat, Ulsan versus CBM. Historically, Ulsan has kind of had CBM's number. And I think in this first match, it felt kind of a similar way. Ulsan with Kazumi took out his CBM's Noctis, I want to say, not easily, but 2-0. And it was kind of what I had expected going into the match. But we'll get in later to like a plot twist about that. And then Arslan versus Lohai was again just like Arslan picked Noctis the same way he did against Anakin, and Lohai had been playing Brian the whole way through the tournament, and I was just so confused. Like, it's the top 8 of the TWT finals, and you're not even going with like your secondary, so I would expect like Kunimitsu, Zafina, and then I guess Katarina or Nina even before Noctis, but Lohai basically 3-0'd Noctis. He was like, "You're gonna pick Noctis against me? Against me?" So that was pretty sick. But then Arslan switched to Kunimitsu, and it was like It was like 1-2 buckled my shoe, I guess. Arslan took out Lohai. In losers, Rangchu versus Ni was an insane match. I highly recommend watching that match. Ni also went with Brian the whole way through. After the first game, in the second game, Ni had to do a reverse sweep in rounds and did it with Brian. And then in the third game, it seemed like Rangchu's offense just had Ni frozen. Like, basically everything Ni was going for was kind of like small, quote unquote, in damage. And everything Rangchu was going for was like bigger in damage, except for forward 1 to keep Ni in check. And so what that meant was, since Rangchu is throwing out twice as many moves as Ni, and he's throwing out bigger moves than Ni, then, or even if they're throwing out the same like damage level moves, if you're throwing out twice as many moves as your opponent and they're hitting twice as much, then your opponent has to do bigger moves. And no matter what happened, Ni almost never went for like a 3+4 or a back 1. And I think that's kind of was his downfall that game. And Rangchu just kind of ran him over in the third game. So then Ni was out, which I was personally kind of rooting for Ni, but that's fine. And then Ao John Ding, similarly, Ao's Kunimitsu is basically like Arslan's Kunimitsu, just slightly not as strong. So, of course, that means one of the best Kunimitsus in the world. Took out John Ding. And then losers round 2, you had Lohai Rangchu, which was also a pretty great match. Lohai started with Steve, then went to Brian, and it kind of went down to the wire. Lohai took it, though. CBM versus Ao. CBM has gotten so much better since he switched to Noctis. Like, he was always a top player, but he's now like genuinely top in the world. His Noctis and back two is just ridiculous. Like, he spams back two so shamelessly. Like, if this was a casual match, people would be like, stop spamming back two. But CBM over as Kunimitsu. It was 2-1, but ultimately it ended up being pretty dominant by CBM. And then the losers round 3, also Lowhigh versus CBM, was another pretty close, pretty cool match. I highly recommend checking out. Finally, losers finals, CBM versus Ulsan. Wait. Winners finals. Ulsan versus Arslan Ash. Arguably the match of the tournament. Probably the match of the tournament. Along with a Tiff versus John Ding. But this so went down to the wire. If you haven't seen this, please go watch it. Arslan Ash is the most composed, calm, and collected player, like, easily in the world. As in clutch. He's just so clutch. Ulsan plays a million miles per hour, even in the final seconds, and Arslan is just, it's crazy how clutch he is. And then Ulsan versus CBM in the losers final. This was a huge surprise match for me because, like I said, CBM has kind of historically had Ulsan's number in tournament, but CBM off the bat double 3-0'd Ulsan's Kazumi. And then Ulsan right back to his Noctis, double 3-0'd his Noctis with his Bob. And then the final match, CBM actually took it. And this was a huge surprise to me because I really, really expected Ulsan to, I guess, beat CBM again, but CBM's Noctis back two is too strong. Every time you hit, as a spectator, right, you're watching CBM's matches and you're just like, block, just block. He's going to back two. He's going to back two. And then 2 seconds later, they get hit with back two. And I'm like, oh gosh. And obviously, as a spectator, it's easy to feel like, just block. But as a player, you can't do that because you'll just lose. But yeah, CBM's back two timing is just absurd. I've never seen someone like use a move that much at a top level, except for maybe Dragunov's down two. But then in the finals, I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest. CBM beat Ulsan, not because I don't think CBM deserves it or anything like that. I think CBM's awesome, just because I think Ulsan, I wanted to see the run back from winners finals. I really wanted to see, I think Ulsan could have gave Arslan Ash a bit of a better run for his money, but Arslan Ash with the Katarina, a character who I think's been underrated for a while, but the character doesn't matter. Arslan Ash took it home. It actually was not too one-sided, but I don't think there was ever any doubt, especially coming from winner's side, that Arslan was going to take the tournament. And it was just such a dominant performance by Arslan, and I think a really suiting end to Tekken 7. No player has been as dominant as Arslan. No player has been as dominant as Arslan throughout Tekken 7's history. Ni, I think, has been clearly the second most dominant player over the course of his lifespan. He's the only one who's won anything even somewhat comparable to Arslan in terms of winning CEO, Combo Breaker, Evo Japan, all that stuff. But now Arslan has won the Tekken World Tour Finals, 4 Evo champions. He three-peated this year, so Evo Japan, and Tekken World Tour Finals, a perfect year to end Tekken 7. Everyone's saying this, but the undisputed GOAT of Tekken 7, I can't believe, it's absurd how strong Arslan is. Especially, like, I think I need to think more about his grand finals with Katarina, but it's especially the way he uses Kunimitsu, and I've talked about it in the past. The way he uses the second and third hit of strings to catch opponents and then initiate mix-ups is just, like, robotic. It's robotic because the range at which you have to do this and the timing with which you have to do this to successfully pull off using 2-2, for example, to only have the second hit and to catch basically anything your opponent does is like such a small window of range and requires such precise timing. The fact he just constantly uses that as a tool in matches to initiate then mix-ups is just crazy. His mind games, his clutch is just, it's absurd. But yeah, Arslan took it. It was a super fitting end, and it was an amazing, amazing last tournament to say goodbye to Tekken 7. I think that in general, the Tekken World Tour Finals has been a great event for Tekken 7, and I hope it remains the same for Tekken 8. It seems like it will be as they announce the new Tekken World Tour for Tekken 8. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really curious about what players from Tekken 7 who have been dominant, like how will their skills carry over to Tekken 8? I think we can definitely expect some of the same names like Ulsan, CBM, and Arslan starting off really strong. But who will be on the come up is going to be super interesting. And I'm super excited to play as well. And so, yeah, I know that was kind of a quick recap, but thanks for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed the last Tekken World Tour Finals of Tekken 7. And this is the final tournament recap of Tekken 7. So when there's a Tekken 8 tournament, like a major one, you can expect a recap from me as well. Anyways, thanks for listening and have a great day.